Baldur's Gate 3 has been an emotional roller coaster for me. There are a handful of games that I've played over the years that have brought me to literal tears, whether those are tears of joy or tears of sadness or tears of simple emotional, overwhelming everything, right? I can look at, say, Red Dead Redemption 2, the ending right before you go into the John Marston part. That ending with the sunset and everything that's happening. And I've played Red Dead Redemption 2 through 3 times now, and I cry like a baby every time I get to that scene. I can look at. Here's another example from film. Chris makes fun of me because every time we watch a show or a movie, she can literally watch my face and she can tell when I'm about to start crying. Like the death scene for Boromir in The Lord of the Rings, I weep like someone died in my family every single time that happens because he gives that speech about how, I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king, and I'm getting like a little emotional right now just thinking about it. It's just so good. And like I know when I just did God of War Ragnarok around Christmas time, there's a scene when Loki is finally getting into shape shifting and he's with the giant girl on that other place and they're running through and they're shape shifting and they have the little race and I was just so amped up with emotion that I was like, oh, this is amazing. And this game, for those of you who've been watching my live streams, I have had, I don't know, 7, 8 times now since I started this game. There have been moments that have made me cry in Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm going to talk about them today because I think it's amazing to have a game that can emotionally impact you in such a way. But before we get to that point, I have to say, huge spoiler alert. If you have not played the game yet, don't watch any further because I don't want to spoil it for those of you who haven't played story elements yet. I just entered Act 3 yesterday. I'm recording this on the morning of August 22nd. So this will probably be airing on the 23rd, I believe. So somewhere in that ballpark. Just got to Act 3, and there have been multiple moments that have made me cry for various reasons. And I'm going to be talking about those here. So again, if you haven't played the story yet and you don't want things spoiled, this is your last chance to walk away because everything after this point we are going to spoil all of the things. Now, if you're okay with that and you've already played, awesome. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Daily streams at 11 a.m. Central Time. Also on the weekends, we typically do a couple of streams on Saturday, one in the morning, one at night. Usually on Saturdays, it's quite a bit earlier. We do multiplayer streams on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central with myself, Bubalonia, and Mujin. If you want to catch those, links to Discord and all the other things are down below. And without further ado, let's get into it. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee, which is gonna give all of you who don't want things spoiled plenty of time to walk away. Last warning. All right, everybody, let's do it. So I am playing I would argue a good playthrough. It's like a chaotic good playthrough. I have a druid in my party as the main character, Circle the Moon Druid. I have Lae'zel in my party. I have Shadowheart in my party, and I have Gale in my party. And I knew going into it, after having played early access for a few years, that I was going to romance Shadowheart on my first playthrough of the game. I also knew that I was going to take Lae'zel through me, and this is a moment that actually happened in. Well, we'll talk about this one first, and then we'll get to the Shadowheart stuff. I've been very open about the fact that Lae'zel, I did not like her when I first started playing early access back in 2020. The kicker for me was in the early 2023 when I was starting to get back into Baldur's Gate 3 because we knew it was coming out. And then when they made the announcement here in mid 2023 that they were bumping the release up a month, I was like, okay, we're going whole hog now. We're going to start to go through. And I came across this scene in early access, and it was so well done that it changed my viewpoint on Lae'zel entirely. And that is the scene when you are in, it's like early-ish in Act 1. There's a moment when you go to have a sleep at your camp, and you do a long rest. And you wake up with the sweats and the chills, right? And you lean up against a rock or a tree or something, and you're sort of trying to figure out what's going on. And here comes Lae'zel with a knife, and she puts a knife to your throat. And I've actually, if you fail that, she totally kills you and takes out the party. It's great. But if you make the success on the rolls and you look into her mind and you see her fears, Larian Studios did something with a combination of music, mocap, and voice actors who are everyone is so talented in this game, and it's a combination of the writing and all of these elements coming together to set the mood and the tone and everything else, but also the credit to the actors for pulling off these voices. That moment when you peer into her mind and then you realize that she actually is fearing for her life and everything else. She's fearful of what comes. And you talk to her about that fear. And you can see it in her face and the way they did the mocap, and you can hear it in her voice and everything else. And she confesses that she's terrified. That was the moment that made me go, oh my god, I'm taking Lizelle through my party. I need to see this character turn away from Vlaakith, the Githyanki queen. I need to see her turn away from that horrific mentality and become a good character. That was the start of her journey, because then when we were able to convince her that her queen is not a good person and does not have her best interests at heart, and when she finally has the realization that she's just cannon fodder for the queen's power and becoming a god at all costs, and she finally makes that realization, that was one of the moments in this game that I've had multiple times through her story arc of that emotional journey bringing me to tears. I'll talk Shadowheart in a minute, but there was a moment that happened during a live stream. It was either yesterday or the day before. When you finish Act 2 and you've done all the things that you can do, and you've saved the Shadow Curse lands, and you've healed the curse, and you've saved Thaniel, and you've done all the things you're supposed to do, and you're entering into Act 3, and it shows the curse being lifted off of the Shadow Curse lands and everything coming back to its previous glory. That was such an emotional high for me during the live stream that I just kind of sat there and I was just emotionally overwhelmed, because I was like, I did that. I did that. I get into the heads of my characters in it's movies, films, books. This goes back to my training as a child. I was a child actor, but only in theater. But I did a lot of acting on stage in my single digits up into my teens, and that's probably a career path I could have chosen had I not wanted to be a writer so much. But I've never had a problem getting into the heads of characters, and that feeling of having healed the Shadow Curse lands was so amazing. Then the moment meeting Jaheira, when you meet her at the last light inn, and there's that sort of confrontation that happens with her, and I was a druid and she's a druid, and she binds you with the roots, and then I go right back at her with my rah, and I break free of the roots, and then she freaks out and gets ready to take me out. That whole scene was just emotionally overwhelming and just like charged with like, yeah, that's right, I'm a druid, bitch, I'm gonna rah. But also seeing Jaheira, knowing how important she was to me as a person growing up, because every playthrough I've ever done of Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2, every single playthrough, Jaheira has been there through the journey. I never left her to the side. Every single character I've played through those two games, I always took Jaheira with me, because she's a cool character, and I loved her voiceovers. Nature's fury awaits, just like so much fun stuff. Um, so that, some of the story elements and everything else. But I think the most impactful one for me has been to watch Shadowheart's journey. But also as a side note to her journey, before I fully talk about Shadowheart, the moment when when you meet the Night Song, right? When you go down into the Shadowfell and you meet the Night Song, which is tied to Shadowheart's story a little bit, but also part of the main story. When you set the Night Song free, and there's that whole animation sequence of her, she's just livid, she's ready to get revenge, and she flies out, and she flies over the Shadow Curse lands, and Jaheira's watching, and she picks up her swords. I was just like, oh my god! But then also, when you battle Ketheric Thorm at the very end, and you've defeated him, and you've taken care of the Avatar of Merkel, and Dame Amelin, I think is that her name, Amelin. She just starts to stomp Ketherick Thorm's corpse and just like like and then when she gets to be with Isabel and she picks Isabel up in this bear hug and like spins her around and you're like, yes, they finally get to be together. Oh my God, this is so amazing. I'm actually getting a little teary-eyed thinking about it right now, but for me, I think the coolest journey of all, and I haven't finished the game yet. Shadowheart's journey, everybody. Oh my God. When when she finally realizes what a horrible deity her deity is, and I think for me the first real crucial moment was at the night song encounter, and she decides not to kill the night song and chucks the spear into the void and renounces Shar, and you're just like, oh my God, this is so amazing. But then when her hair changes and you realize, hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself there. And then part of that storyline is that we then find out, oh no, her parents aren't dead. They're still alive in captivity at the shark by the shark people. And when she has that revelation and she's looking back in her history about the wolf encounter and everything else, and then she realizes that her memories have been purposefully blocked by Shar, and she realizes that she was never found in the woods. She was kidnapped, taken away, and then brainwashed. And she finally sees all that, and she was a Cellunite all along. And when that revelation happens and her hair changes, and instead of having the goth bangs and everything else, now she's got white hair and it's a slightly different hairstyle and everything else. That whole, and I was like, oh my God, I knew going into it that I would be able to like save her, and like it's also the thing I had with Zayla. I was like, I want to save both of these girls because that's who I am. I like that redemption arc, and being able to see that come to fruition with Shadowheart has been one of the defining moments of my gaming career, of seeing that revelation happen, watching the hair change, and her realizing, oh, no, they lied to me all these years, and my parents are being held, and and that's what she's been doing to cause me this pain. Shar has been, like, doing this to me, and I want my vengeance. Like, everything is so overwhelmingly emotionally charged. And here's the thing, everybody. I need a drink of coffee. I just got to Act 3. I still have arguably probably another 30, 40 hours ahead of me, depending on, how completionist I go. I'm 60-ish hours in right now, and I have not gone full completionist mode with this first run through, and the reason for that is because I'm doing multiple playthroughs. So my sorcerer has Karlach, Will, and in the party with Shadowheart, and I will eventually switch out for Halsin, and probably eventually then Jaheira to finish up the game with that playthrough. By the way, that's another thing. I haven't gotten too deep into the Karlach and Will storylines yet, but the revelation of Will being who he is, and then when he gets thrown through the levels of hell and gets the horns and gets cursed and all of that, but then Karlach, the way Karlach is, and she's like, fuck yeah, and like when you get the infernal iron and you're able to help her out and you give her a hug, and she's just so, all of a sudden she's overwhelmed with emotions because she hasn't been able to have a human touch or any sort of touch. I shouldn't say human touch, but she hasn't been able to feel the touch of another person for all these years because of the infernal engine within her. And when she's finally able to have that personal contact. Again, I haven't gotten too deep into that storyline yet, but I'm romancing Karlach with my sorcerer, and I can't wait to see that play out. But I haven't seen any of those things yet, really, to their end, and I haven't seen Act 3, and these are just my impressions after 60 hours of gameplay. I already feel like Baldur's Gate 3 has given me more emotional roller coasters than the last 15, 20 years of gaming. It is overwhelmingly cool what they've done here. Larian Studios, we are not worthy. We bow before you. I'm just like, you have created a masterpiece here, and I cannot wait to not only finish the game, but also to see all of the other characters and their storylines and the emotional journeys that I'm going to go on with my second playthrough and my third playthrough and beyond. Loving it, everybody. Love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to drop them down below so we can discuss what are your favorite emotional moments in Baldur's Gate 3. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Daily streams at 11, multiplayer streams on Tuesdays at 3, 2 streams on Saturdays. There's a Discord, links are down below. Support if you can. Memberships, Super Chat, all those things. There's tons of private videos and member-only chat for those of you who do support. Until next time, everybody, stay safe and happy gaming, or maybe some sad gaming too, depending on the emotional journey that you take in this game. It's all legit, everybody.